Welcome back to Up West Sports. Yeah, tell them, Kyle. Welcome back. I'm going to restart that.
Yeah. Sorry.
You're good, dude. Not a problem. Actually,
There's the blooper.
That was good.
There's actually a good blooper. Just me cracking my neck going out. Wooga.
Yeah, you know what? We're going to keep that one in. It's staying. I'm not going to edit that in post. Welcome back to Up West Sports. I believe this is episode 9. We'll check that in post. And if I'm incorrect, I'm sorry. It's episode 10 or 8. We got some more baseball stuff to talk about. Pile season continues to pile. We got Trevor Gott back in the saddle. Trevor Gott comes back home to Seattle. We'll say it's home. I'm going to say it's home. Garrett Hill, also part of pile season. We're going to deep dive into his stats and see what we got coming out of Garrett Hill. Also, added bonus with the Jimmy Jack today. Rowdy Tellez signs with the Mariners. And first at bat, I believe it was his third pitch. Bomb. Absolute smoke show. Kyle. Nope, we're not there yet. We got some more stuff to talk about. Breakouts thus far in spring training. Today's been a fun day. Breakouts thus far in spring training. Granted, we've only been through 4 games, but we want to kind of highlight some people that have made it worthy of talking about, and just honestly, some people you should keep an eye on through the rest of spring training. And then our last little bit, we're actually going to jump into. I actually have an idea that I've pitched to these guys that we're going to just kind of talk about basically how to enhance the Mariners spring training. You got Mitch Haniger batting for over 400 in spring training, and then we head to Seattle, and it's a whole different ball game. So I have an idea on how we can actually enhance that and make it better. Now it's time. Kyle, let them know.
Baseball stuff!
So first up, we actually have Trevor Gott here. We pulled him up in our screen. We want to talk about him a little bit. Last seen with the Mets in 2023. That was his last year. Half with us and half with the Mets. First half spent 29 innings with us. Had the ERA right around a 4. Only give up 30. Well, only. He gave up 33 hits over 29 innings, 19 runs, 13 of them earned, gave up 2 bombs, 8 bags given up, and then 32 strikeouts. So the K per 9 was in a favorable place. The one thing that I actually saw that was of note was the FIP was right around a 2.98, which is favorable. And then the ERA plus was right there at a 99. Then went over to the Mets. 29 innings on the dot again. Roughly the same stats, a little bit, a couple more games, a little higher ERA, included a save. And then, 14 earned runs, 15 runs given up, 11 walks, 2 intentional, and then 30 strikeouts. So numbers kind of stayed the same. He was pretty equivalent across the year, and he is back in the saddle again for Seattle. Kyle, what are your thoughts on Trevor Gott and just where he's at with our potential bullpen?
I think before I get into that, I think just to help the listeners out there, with some of these advanced analytics, Gavin, can you kind of talk about the ERA plus, the FIP, and kind of how that's calculated and why that means so much? I think that would really help people out there that don't, are the kind of just old school. I know ERA, I know wins, losses, and so on, but let's help them out with that.
Absolutely. So ERA plus is a lot like your WRC plus, where you're going to see this 100 is kind of your average ball player. So his ERA plus was fairly average. And then you dig a little deeper into his FIP or FIP, which is fielding independent percentage. Fielding independent pitching. My apologies. And this is telling you a little bit more of a story of it's equivalent to an ERA, and it's feeling just the independence of the pitcher itself, taking away plays where maybe a shortstop wouldn't have made a play on X team, but would have made a play on Y team, and so it's just solely fielding the pitcher's stats and kind of looking through it through that lens. And so that's kind of what it breaks down to right there. And why those are important is it tells a little bit of a different story. It's not the end all be all. Again, I think Kyle and I agree when it comes to analytics, it gives you a snapshot. It doesn't give you the full story. But when you see certain numbers that stick out, you're like, okay, how can you make this player work for you? How can you make this player better? How does he fit into your lineup or into your bullpen or into your staff? It kind of gives you highlights on how to use specific players or find those diamonds in the rough. It just gives you a deeper snapshot into what could actually help. Yeah, Kyle, what are your thoughts on getting Trevor Gott back?
Well, we talk about pile season, right? And I think right now our bullpen is really. I mean, I think as it comes to bullpen arms, starting pitching, you never can have enough of it. And we've talked about with our starting five last year, kind of having that unicorn season, having missed only 5 starts from our starting 5. You look at our bullpen. Bullpen players can be either they're not performing, they get hurt, and having as many of those as you can have, and you stash them out in AAA. It only can do is help you. And so Trevor Gott being someone, again, who knows Safeco Field, I'm going to call it Safeco Field to the day I die.
It's Safeco.
It helps you. And I think he's, playing for the Mariners, having, again, like I said, that familiarity can only help him as a pitcher. And I think playing at Safeco is it's always been known as a pitcher's park. And so for someone who maybe has fringe stats, maybe more so these are journeyman stats, they're never they'll help you win some games, but if you have them for the long run or if you put them in a setup role, you might not put yourself in a position to succeed. Having him here in Seattle, familiarity, potentially kind of comes in to fill role when someone's hurt. Perfect. I don't think he's he's not going to come in and fix the whole problem, but he's definitely going to help you. Maybe, and I think we've seen some of our pitchers in the Mariners kind of the last 5-6 years, they get streaky. And when they're streaky, they're great to watch. And when they're not, all right, let's put you in AAA. Let's kind of cool you off. We'll bring you back up when we, think we need you and go from there. So if anything, it's a great stash move. But maybe he turns a corner and he becomes someone that you really rely on.
Yeah. And I think you hit the nail on the head there is you can never have too many pitchers. It doesn't matter what level you are, whether it be at the major league level, whether it be at the minor league level, college, high school. I've seen it all the way down to 12U. You can never have too many pitchers. And you know what? I really think, what was that? What was the year? I want to say it was like 2016. 2017, where the Mariners had used like 35 total pitchers for the year, which was like the most. It was some ridiculous number, and don't quote me on the number. It was some ridiculous number where they had used X amount of pitchers, and everybody was just going down with injuries, and it was injury after injury.
The bat boy was starting to look really effective here in this moment. Yeah,
I think at that point in time, Jerry turned a page and was like, "We're not going to have that problem ever again." And we're just going to stockpile and have it a pile season, as most of the Mariner fans and Mariners content creator community have labeled this as pile season. You can never have too many. And Trevor Gott, that is familiar with the Northwest, that is familiar with the Seattle Mariners, and played as recently as 2023. I think it is a great get. I think it is somebody get Gott. Trevor, it is a great get Gott. I think it is a good move, and I think he'll probably end up in AAA unless he takes his leave to go somewhere else. If he doesn't make the big leagues, he might just say, all right, I'm going to take my chances in Miami or wherever, could use him. But In the meantime, if he enjoys pitching in the Mariners organization, he might stay in Tacoma, and he could be a huge threat down the way. Or maybe he ends up winning a spot over Fujinami or one of the other guys. Wanted to transition to our other guy, Garrett Hill, who we just saw in MLB Trade Rumors that he is going to make an appearance. So I'm going to pull up Garrett Hill. So here we go. We got Garrett Hill. Nice, young, 90, born in 96. God, it makes me feel old. He's 29. He's almost 30. Why am I old? All right, we'll talk about Garrett Hill. So he spent 2 years in Detroit, and you saw in the first year him with 60 plus innings, and he had 8 games started. Second year in 2023, 15 innings, and then 2024, no stats. So when we see these numbers, right, like a 4.03 ERA, 60 innings, 8 starts, it makes you wonder what's going on over here. 40 strikeouts over 60 innings is a bit of a red flag. I'm not a huge proponent on you have to strike everybody out, but that K per 9 is pretty low in my opinion. And then you take a look at the ERA plus, right around average, maybe slightly below, and then the FIP tells a little bit more of a story of it's ERA equivalent, so 5.15, not the greatest, even though his ERA was a 4.03. Kyle, I know we talked about it a little bit. Do you want to maybe delve into why that versus the rest of the numbers is kind of showing?
Yeah, if you dig into it a little bit more, I mean, we dig into 2022 a little bit more, in detail. You can really see that this is a pitcher that was in transition, moving from as a starter to a reliever. And in previous segments we've talked about, that is a massive change, and I don't think people really understand that because there's when you're a starter, you've got a routine, and it starts from the moment it starts from the day you're done pitching. When you're done with the start, that's when your routine starts, from recovery to lifting to groundwork to the stretching routines, all the way up to your next start. There is a massive routine that is essentially taking up a whole 5-6 days between starts. When you're a reliever, it's 24 hours. It might even be less than 24 hours, really. And depending on if you're playing, you go from a night game to a day game, and you have to be ready whenever that call is made. And so it's an adjustment. And if this is someone who from, let's say high school to college to, minor leagues has always been a starter, that could be, let's just say for all intents and purposes, let's say 15 years. He has done this for, not 15 years, let's say 10 years. 10 years he's been doing this from the age of 18 to 28. He has been doing this type of stuff. And again, just trying to just be cognizant of, how long he's been in the league, this and that. But if you've been a starter for a long time and you move to the reliever role, it is a major adjustment. And if you look at his stats, it really paints a picture. I mean, you look at some of it, so the beginning of the year, you see him, he's a starter. He's nothing great, but he's nothing, it's not like, oh my God, why we throw him out there? Like, do we have anybody else? He is, I would say, worthy of starting. Obviously, I think some of the issues he probably dealt with his walks. His walks seem to be very high, and I think that caused some issues. Especially when you're not striking a lot of people out, you're not really netting out that negative. And so you move him into the bullpen, and he's okay, but again, that walk and K ratio that he has, it doesn't really translate well to the bullpen, in my opinion. But if you look at his ERA, he's kind of one of those guys that creates his own chaos but gets himself out of it. And so he might be someone that you say, hey, you actually thrive when the chips are against you. We'll use you as a high leverage guy and hope that based on what the story reads of your stats, you're a guy that likes the pressure and actually needs to be in those particular situations to see your stuff really jump off the page. So he's, it could be a really interesting piece if, and this is where you'd say, okay, spring training, let's put this guy in a real situational, position and see how he thrives and kind of test the theory. But
Yeah.
to me, the stats, you can't look at those stats, at the high level and say, oh, this guy is trash, or why did we pick him up? There's more to it. And I think the Mariners are reading that. And that's why you see this pickup today.
Yeah. I saw, 40 strikeouts, 29 walks. Yeah, not favorable in any sense of it. The walks are definitely a little higher. I think, at least comparatively to Trevor Gott, there's virtually no chance of him breaking camp with the roster. Even if he goes like 15 innings all scoreless, I don't think there's a chance that he breaks the camp with the boys. But he is one of those guys that if he shows out well, obviously he'll get the invite to Tacoma. He won't just be outrighted and say, good luck trying to find somewhere else. Because I feel like that's kind of what they're giving him an extended offer of saying, hey, prove why you should be in our organization or, anybody's organization. And I think he has a chance to go prove that, go in AAA, go prove it again. And then barring injuries, that's where he'll probably see that next step. I like the guy. I would definitely want to see more from him. I think between Trevor Gott and Garrett Hill, obviously I'm more excited about Trevor Gott because he's a former Mariner and has been good for the Mariners and has been good in the past. I'm excited to see, what they're both going to produce in spring training. So we covered the pitchers. Pile season continues to pile.
I will say the one thing I would mention about Garrett Hill, he's a San Diego State grad, so as a WCC. Right. So he's playing the Gonzagas, the Portlands. So he is playing in this type of climate. So he might know the game too. I think the biggest question for him is, do the Mariners use him as a reliever, as a high leverage guy, or do they see him as a starter and have him be kind of a spot guy?
Hey, because it just happened today. Because it just happened today, shout out to University of Portland, just because it's in in the Northwest. Give him a shout out. Ryan Rembiz ends up getting a perfect game. That doesn't happen too often at the college level. So shout out.
First time in Portland history.
That is crazy. So shout out to not only the West Coast Conference, not only the Northwest, but University of Portland and Ryan Rembiz. Kind of switching over to, I know Kyle was chomping his teeth at the bit to talk about this guy, Rowdy Tellez. Let's go ahead and kick it over to Kyle for Rowdy. I'll be honest, I'm excited as well. Here's the big boy. We add to the look at that picture. There we go. There's Dan Vogelbach, but like 5 inches taller. I love it. Rowdy Tellez. Kyle, what do you got on him?
I love the move because I think this is a guy that he's not gonna, his stats again aren't gonna jump off the page, but if you look at what he does, it's kind of that back to that line of being great at one thing or being good at everything. And if you look at his numbers, I would say he's more trending on the good at everything. He's hitting extra base hits. He's only struck out over 100 times twice in his career. And if you look at his body of work, you're thinking, oh, this guy is probably a 130 plus strikeout guy a year. He's really not. He's more like a 2.5 to 1 K to walk ratio, which isn't actually bad, especially when you think of a guy that is, he's not a base stealer. Even though he's got 4 bags. I don't know if Vogelbach had that many, but so
he's a bag stealer.
Oh, okay. Then we're good to go. Then we need those. But I think he's a good fit. And and from what I've seen or read, he seems like he's a clubhouse guy. He's a guy that really can maybe bring some excitement, just lift things up. And beyond that, and sometimes this guy, like last year, this guy had every reason to hate the game, hate the business of baseball. Pittsburgh Pirates completely threw this guy to the curb when this guy became a fan favorite. And what I'm explaining is there were 6 games left in the year. Pittsburgh, obviously was eliminated at that point. Paul Skeens obviously was the big thing of the world, but 6 games left. He needed 4 at-bats to reach a 200K bonus, and they cut him. To me, and they can say all they want, it had nothing to do with that production, it was production, this or that, had nothing to do with this bonus. I mean, you can talk all you want, but that is complete BS. It was a money move, and it was dirty. I mean, you look at like what the Yankees did with CC Sabathia when he needed a certain amount of innings to get a 500K bonus. But you know what he did? He protected his boys. He drilled that guy because it was what he did to make sure his team knew I got you 24/7. And you know what the Yankees did? They paid him the bonus. They were happy to pay him that bonus. Pittsburgh, I hope this guy, if he doesn't land on our team, I hope he finds another team. He finds you and absolutely rakes.
I hope he
Because
does too.
you deserve. To me, these are the few good players or the few good people you have that are in these organizations, and then you treat them like this. That's karma. To me, karma needs to come into this one. And I'll get off my venting, but
oh, you're good. Let it eat.
I'm excited about Rowdy.
Same.
What did you say? 3 pitches today and goes Rowdy on a ball. Love it. And I think this would be a guy that we talk about pile season. We're piling up first baseman, and I think you made a mark. And I want you to talk about kind of the potentials of injuries. But I think this is a guy that he makes the roster. I think he's worthy of it. I think just for what he does. But I want you to touch a little bit more on like kind of your scenarios, because I think they're really good.
Yeah. No, honestly, I'd be a little shocked if he doesn't break camp with the Mariners. You talk about veterancy. You talk about guys that can come in off the bench. Right now, Mitch Haniger seems like he might be that guy that comes in off the bench. Rowdy Tellez is your left-handed version of that, but not only that, he is a better version of that guy that can come in off the bench. There's other scenarios where, one of our outfielders either doesn't play well, right? Like maybe Victor Robles has a regression. I hope not. I'm a huge Victor Robles fan. I'm expecting, a big year from him, and hopefully he just completely does the back nine of his career at an elite level. But excited to see Victor Robles. But let's say something happens, or Randy Arozarena this year just doesn't quite work out the way we anticipated. It's a money saver trading Randy Arozarena, as Ryan Divish put. They will trade him if they absolutely need to, and so they trade him. Then you move Luke Raley to the outfield. Now you have Rowdy Tellez at first base. But in the meantime, Tellez could give you an absolute, in the meantime, and at the very bar minimum, I think Rowdy Tellez gives you he gives you 4 bags off the bench potential. He can leave the yard at any point in time, as we just saw today, which was awesome. 3 pitches, an absolute Jimmy Jack, gone. 432 feet, I believe, 111 off the bat, just absolutely nuked. Rowdy Tellez, this is, I guess, your cheaper version of trying to replace Justin Turner and Carlos Santana, because they provide a lot of the same things where they all have power. They're all veterans. They've all seen the game at a high elite level. The one thing that, I guess the other added factor is, Carlos Santana was a fan favorite. I think everybody loved Carlos Santana. Justin Turner, in just the short time that he was here, became a fan favorite and also a team favorite. Everyone in that dugout loved him. And that's why I really wanted him back, because he was that leader in the dugout. Not that any of the other guys that we're talking about aren't, but Justin Turner, I think more so than anybody else, really shined as a leader. And he really showed the way in a way that we haven't seen from too many other guys in the past. I think Jerry does a really good job of bringing good people in. He doesn't stray too far away from vanilla. We don't have your Wander Francos. We won't go too far into what he did, but he doesn't go in that direction. And then he also doesn't get your Max Scherzers, the guys that are going to light the clubhouse on fire in a positive way. He doesn't stray too far from the middle as far as shaking up things in the clubhouse. And I think Justin Turner was in that positive direction, and somebody you needed to capitalize on by being back in your clubhouse. Rowdy Tellez, however, is already a fan favorite. Like they're already saying, like, this is the torch has been passed from Daeho Lee and Bucky Jacobson and Dan Vogelbach. I know I'm forgetting another big guy in there. Oh, Mike Ford. Sorry. Mike Ford. The torch has been passed. And so now, yeah, you kind of have to see that one through and see what Rowdy Tellez can give you through a full year. Excited to see what Rowdy Tellez can give you, and that kind of brings us into our spring training. We're I believe 6 games in. We're a handful of games in now. Let's go ahead and pull up the spring training stats and see who we're excited about. Granted, we're only a handful of games in, and in all honesty, you can't take, even if it's an entirety of spring training, you can't take it. You have to take it with a little grain of salt. Again, I'll relay right back to Mitch Haniger batted over 400 last year, and gave us the season that he gave. So let's go ahead and take a look at our spring training stats, see where we're at, see what we like. Because there's been a couple of surprises. There's been some cool stuff that you should probably be happy for. We'll go ahead and lead it off with Hogan Windish. He's right there at the top. Played in 3 games, 5 at bats, 3 hits, 2 home runs, 4 RBI, and he has 2 strikeouts. Do I think he's going to break camp with the Dogs? No, I don't. But this is a guy that all right, keep your eye on him, see what happens over, the next month. And where does he end up? If Luke Raley doesn't start doing well, or if we have injury, we're starting to hit with the injury plague. Is this our next guy? Is this the guy that we need to give that roster spot to before they turn into Jake Shiner? And you never gave him an opportunity at the top, and he's 28 years old, now he's overseas. So I'm going to kick it over to Kyle. Kyle, what are your thoughts?
So, kind of, again, like we talked about before, my dark horse, or at least my kind of young guy to break camp, has been Cole Young. I think again, he's that guy that's good at everything. And why and I don't mean it negatively when I say, not great at anything, but he's good at everything, in my opinion. He's a great fielder, thrower. I think he's got great plate presence. Unfortunately, he's dealing, and he's actually thriving right now. I think as the season goes on, you look at his stats, he's hitting well. I think he's played. He hasn't gotten to play in the field, which is probably why he's not going to break camp. Sounds like he's got an arm issue, which is a real bummer. Because I think with a healthy arm, I think he's a guy that comes up and potentially competes for that second base position. But without him kind of in that slot, you kind of go, okay, who's that next utility guy? I think Bliss will essentially fill that initial utility role that has been vacated by Dylan Moore. But what's that second person? Kind of that Sam Haggerty role, if you may. Ben Williamson. I think he is so far. We're 6 games in. He's had a great camp. I think, again, young guy, third baseman, second baseman, I think could easily shift over to first. Great plate presence, and is shown some wheels. He's got a triple on the year. He might be one of the, few people that do have one. So far, looking at the stats, he's the only one. But he's 3 games, 5 at bats, 3 hits. He's sitting there with 3 ribbies. And what I love, while I don't love the no walks, no strikeouts. To me, so that means he's putting bat to ball. To me, right now, he potentially could be a dark horse to fill in that role. And if it's not him, the other person I really would hope would get an opportunity, and I think deserves to get an opportunity, and hopefully, like a Windish, doesn't get that Jake Schreiner kind of label, would be a Samad Taylor. I think he's due for an opportunity. I think he's more. Now, granted, you look at what he does as a left fielder. You see he's got 4 Ks. That obviously is a little deflating, but the guy's still batting 375. So he's kind of that. And I guess maybe that's probably why they don't like him as much as, Adam Dunn strikes out a ton, but he also hits a ton of bombs, where Samad's maybe, he's hitting you singles and striking out. Well, that doesn't do me a whole lot. So could he clean that up before the spring training ends and we see maybe a more positive trend? But he's also an outfielder, and we have too many of those at this point in time. So, and now I don't think Michael Arroyo's done too much. Colt Emerson, he's playing made a great play today. He's just not hitting. I think he's just, and in that case, he's just not ready. Major league pitching, I think right now is still just a little quick for him. But again, he's 19. You can't put that anywhere.
He's 19.
I get that. So
not a whole lot you could put on that.
But I think it's great exposure for him. So right now, I think Ben Williamson is really that guy in terms of versatility that I see as someone who could make the club and be that second utility.
Yeah, I Ben Williamson, it bears repeating. I know we've talked about it in probably 2 or 3 episodes now. Ben Williamson is a dark horse, and he may not break camp with the boys at the end of this whole thing. But I think at some point in 2025, I think he could be a player that is he's an impact player at some point this year. I think so. Or I think if you give him the opportunity to, he will be. That's what I think. And it's the same thing with Samad Taylor. It sucks that we can't give these guys opportunities at the top because we are in it. As crazy as it sounds, because there was really no, the offseason was so tame. We're in a contention window and we need to win. And it's tough to give players like that opportunities on a lengthy scale to see if they're going to be good when you're trying to win. And that's part of the problem of the perpetual mediocrity that has just been over years given to us from the ownership and front office. We strive to be in the 80 game wins, or sorry, the 80 wins. That's kind of that mark, right in that between 80 and 90. And it's not good enough to get you to the playoffs, and it's not good enough to get you a good draft pick. Now, we got lucky this year because they finally changed the rules and did the lottery, and we got the number 3 pick. That's, I mean, we'd be staring at 17 or 18, I think would have been our pick if we didn't get lucky with that pick.
54%.
Yeah, 54%. So that's another reason why 54% just is a terrible goal. Not good enough to get you in, and not good enough or bad enough to get you a good draft and reboot. But back to my regular point of every year you're in a contention window, it's tough to test things out. And I can see how Jerry and company have gotten to this point where Jake Shiner just never gets his opportunity. And I think, Samad Taylor is on that path. And I think a couple of these other guys are on that path. It'll be interesting to see. The other guy I wanted to point out, and he had, I believe, is a 12 pitch at bat in that first or second game. Nick Dunn, man, he was good. Actually, and now that I think about it, I think it was against the Angels that he had that bat. But man, he has gotten off to such a hot start. I'm excited to see what this kid can do. I'm excited to see what he'll do. He'll probably, end up in AA or AAA. But between,
I'll tell you what, Tacoma Rainiers right now are slated to look real fun.
And
like that
usually
might be your next best ticket.
What's crazy is they're usually good, and they usually have a good influx of veterans that have been that age 27 to 32 players that have just been, 4A players that have been up and down. They've dabbled a little bit in the bigs, but now you have some players that are starting to emerge. Most likely Cole Young will be in AAA. Nick Dunn will probably be in AAA. Harry Ford has a chance to be in AAA. You got Blake Hunt, who, had a really good year in AAA before we traded him for Mike Baumann. Another player I wanted to highlight right here, Carlos Jimenez. Gotten off to a hot start. He's still super young. He was in Modesto, I believe, last year. Yeah, this kid you need to keep an eye on. He also steals a ton of bags. So make sure to keep an eye on this kid. No matter what the rest of the camp looks like, I believe he'll probably start off in Everett. This is a guy you need to keep tabs on. I've seen him thrown around in trade rumors. This is a kid where you need to actually pay attention to what he's doing somewhere down in either high A or low A. He's going to be good. I think he's really going to turn a corner this year, and you're going to see something pretty cool. Samad Taylor, Ben Williamson, Hogan Windish, all three of these guys are in just the same boat, and they're all probably going to be in AAA to start off the year. Ryan Bliss even has a chance to start off in AAA. It pains me just to say it because he's also earned. He's in the same boat. Him and Samad Taylor, they're in the same boat. They have earned the right to lose a starting position. It's the best way I can say it. Mm-hmm. It's just unfortunately not with the Mariners right now with how everything's set up. Right now, Ryan Bliss is fighting Dylan Moore. Dylan Moore, you kind of have to give him it's your job to lose. And so Ryan Bliss is the backfill. He's going to get at bats when he can. If there's anybody injured, he'll obviously take over. Samad Taylor has experience playing second base and outfield, so he can give you both of that as well. So you have two of kind of the same players with Samad Taylor and Ryan Bliss. Ryan Bliss has a little more pedigree on the infield, being a former, all SEC shortstop, which I believe he has a handful of games at shortstop in the minor leagues. I don't think he's done bad. So he can give you shortstop, he can give you third base, he can give you second base. He doesn't have a terrible arm, and he obviously has next level speed. I think he had 30+ bags. Samad Taylor's kind of in that same boat. I don't know if Samad Taylor's arm is quite as good as Ryan Bliss, but I can't imagine it's terrible. Maybe it is. I don't know. To be honest, I don't know what it looks like from a ball in the gap, or ball in the 6 hole, or ball deep in the 4 hole. I'd be interested to see what that looks like. But also, you take everything else away, he can hit. Mm-hmm. Then you got Dominic Canzone for the outfield. It's going to be an absolute battle for some of these guys, and they may not get the opportunity. But we wanted to highlight some of these guys that you need to pay attention to. If you haven't invested in Tacoma Rainiers tickets, I would. Just seeing what this lineup's probably going to shape up to be. This will be an interesting one to watch. But yeah, this Laz Montez, I wanted to give him a shout out. He had an absolute mammo jack. Excited to see what he's going to do. He'll probably start off in high A, just because that's where he ended up last year, and he struggled for the first month and then kind of picked it back up from there. Also, his hitting coach, who we actually had on the show, a friend of the pod, Jordan Cowan. That was one of his, highlighting moments. He really loved working with Laz Montez, and it'll be exciting to see him just kind of in the area. He'll be in Everett, right down the road from Seattle. Curious to see what that looks like this year, and where he ends up. I would assume at some point, if he's doing any form of good, they'll probably give him a chance in AA. Cal Raleigh, when they say don't put too much stock into spring training stats, this is part of it. Brock Rodden, another guy, will probably, he's behind so many other guys. I don't think he'll get too many opportunities. Austin Shenton is now fighting for his life with Ben Williamson, Hogan Windish, Samad Taylor, Ryan Bliss, and all these other guys. I never thought I'd see when they picked him up in the offseason. I was like, oh yeah, that's for sure. He's for sure on the team. He'll get his opportunities, and he's a local guy. He's from Washington. Then you look at Rylan Thomas, who we ended up trading Stanek for. That was the Stanek deal. Cole Young is dealing with the arm problems right now. As a couple, I believe, is Adam Jude. Maybe I'm wrong. Want to get that person correct, but I want to say it was Adam Jude. He's dealing with some arm problems, so he'll probably end up, even if he hits super well, it suggests that he'll probably start off in AAA. Then you got the rest of the guys. Bill Knight, which that's a funny name for the Northwest. For those of you that aren't Nike fans or fans of University of Oregon, Bill Knight. Tyler Locklear is starting to make the case with Miles Mastroboni, Jacob Nottingham. It's pile season for the hitters too. I believe now that you have Tellez, I think Locklear starts off in AAA again, and they're probably going to give him the same treatment as the other guys because he's starting to climb up in age a little bit. So I think you can see Tyler Locklear with that. Kyle, I've been talking for too long. I wanted to kick it back over to you. Any final thoughts from the hitters?
Well, You said Bill Knight. You mean Phil Knight. Bill Knight would be the chair throwing head coach for Indiana. But
Yeah, you're right.
just want to get you on that one. That's all good. It's college basketball.
Yeah,
That's not the game we're here
it's
at.
not my forte.
Um,
It's not my forte, but it was in the same realm. Took two of the best and put them together.
right. So, two thoughts on this. It's a great thing to have, right? You have so many players, but it's one of those things of wish if you had so many players, but you were having all this success at the major league level, you'd be ecstatic, right? Like you got all these players they're showing up, showing out, showing potential to play at the major league level. The problem is you don't have the results of the major league level to essentially look at that and go, this is a great thing. To me, this is a negative. You have all these players that have and there's all these log jams at positions, yet you've yet to use that capital when you refuse to use your checkbook to go get players for the major league level. I mean, you look at some of these other teams, they don't have log jams because they've got their players, they've got their untouchables, they're moving up. Maybe they've got a position or two where there's a log jam. We've now got AA and AAA squads that are log jams, the team itself. And it adds to the kind of the frustration of the management of the Mariners to go, what are we doing here? Like you could have traded, I mean, not saying I want to trade you could trade a Ben Williamson, Laz Montez, and maybe a Michael Arroyo, and you could really get something. And, or at least, I mean, something of a major league pedigree. And I think that's what's frustrating is we have all these people we're just hoarding on to, and it's just looking at, okay, well, what are we going to do? Because to me, if you've got, you talked about kind of that window that we have right now, and you maybe can bring in one or two guys to kind of have that, let's just say 20 game kind of test run to see how we're doing. Well, the hard part about that is usually you're doing that because 75% of your line, let's say 6 out of 9 guys are solid players. We've got a bunch of maybes. You've got a Gold Glove utility player playing second base. You've got a knee injury prone third baseman that just finished the year playing second base. You got a first baseman that plays right field. You've got a right fielder playing center field. We're not a finished product at the major league level, but we're acting like we are. And that, to me, that's the problem. And when you have these log jams that are now becoming not just position log jams, they are level log jams, it just adds to the frustration of the Mariner fans, and they have every reason to be. And I mean, and I think Dipoto and Holland, or is it Holland? Or is it Hollander?
Yeah. Hollander. Yeah.
I feel bad for them. Frankly, I'm shocked they're still here because I don't know what management other than maybe the Marlins, but I think you kind of know what you're essentially doing when you show up there for work to say, we talk this game, but yet we don't put it on the field. And you have all these assets that could be utilized in lieu of paying people. So you don't want to use your checkbook. Great. Use your assets. Oh, well, they could be something big. We have to stop being fearful of projections. Utilize those to your advantage and get people that have the major league pedigree, and let's see what happens. If the guy becomes great, phenomenal. But quite frankly, with Dipoto's kind of track record with hitters, they haven't turned out great. So let's use the projections and use the hype and get someone we know hits at that level.
I agree. I think
that's all I got.
I think he hit the nail on the head. And for those out there wondering, we'll cover pitchers in a later episode. There's just not enough stats. I mean, there's not enough with our hitters, but there was at least like 6, 7 at bats. Some people were starting to break out. Pitchers, yeah. I mean, there's a couple guys that we can talk about, like Casey Legamina, looking a little bit like Paul Sewald. But yeah, guys only have 1 or 2 innings right now. So we're actually going to cover pitchers on a later episode. But I agree. Going back to your point, I feel like Jerry, and maybe I'm wrong, but this is just what it looks like from the outside looking in with no evidence or no information. This is what it looks like from the outside looking in. I'm not trying to make assumptions, but I'm giving my thoughts on what your organization looks like to a fan. it looks like Jerry's the face that just, wears what the what the budget is that's being given to him from John Stanton and company up there, and saying, "Hey, don't make me look like an ass. You don't need to go win a World Series, but you just don't need. You need to try and make a playoff push every year."
54%.
54%, and he came out and just flat out said it. Ryan Divish famously said they need a VP of common sense because, oh boy, do they absolutely need one. Well, they have one. Justin Hollander actually came on an interview not too long ago, and he sounded like that's what you need. That's what you need to sound like. Yeah, I really think that's kind of how it's operating. I think the reason why they're still there is because that's what's given to them. Stanton's saying, "Hey, don't make me look like an ass. Don't make this organization look like an ass. Just go out there and try and win 80 plus games. And if you make a playoff run, awesome. Let's go." I really don't see a winning attitude coming from above. That's what it looks like with no information and just looking at this team for the last 20 plus years. That's what it looks like.
Uninvested, uninterested.
Yeah. Anyways, I wanted to kind of kick it over to a lighter note. I had a really cool idea, and let me know what your thoughts are in the comments. But here's my idea for spring training. The Mariners historically have, and this is what even a couple people have just come out and said, don't take a look at the stats in spring training and just see how everything translates. Well, how is everything going to translate? So here's my idea on how you should enhance spring training. The spring training lasts end of February to end of March. Start it same time, be here in Arizona. And then that last week, because we don't even have a FanFest anymore, that last week, go back home, play with the marine layer, with the bad weather, kind of get a 1 week on-ramp period into your season and just get used to just being acclimated to Seattle and playing baseball in Seattle, because it's different. It's different than down here. If you don't believe me, I'm just going to go ahead and beat the drum again. Look at Mitch Haniger's stats and tell me it's not the same. It is. It's not the same. So here's my idea. That last week, instead of having FanFest, have your top 30 prospects, plus maybe a few beyond that where you can field a team. Make sure you have enough pitching that you can kind of get through a week, doing certain stuff like that, on-ramping for them as well. But have your top prospects either play against each other or play against your big league talent, or intermix of some degree. Would love to hear your guys' comments. Would you go to something like that? If the top prospects were playing or intermingling with the team down here, you can't quite make it down to spring training. Not everybody can every year. So they get to play at home in Seattle against their own guys. And then maybe you pepper in Oakland comes up. Well, not Oakland anymore, Sacramento. The A's come up and you play them for an exhibition game over the weekend. That way you're getting competition against actual people, but you're playing a full week in Seattle and you're making it party-like, I guess is the best way to put it. You're inviting fans. The team makes money from having those games in Seattle. You're getting to see and meet top prospects in Seattle, and the top prospects themselves are getting to be in Seattle and getting used to playing and acclimated in Seattle that last week. I don't know, just a thought. Maybe they're told by the MLB that you have to play through X dates, and maybe there's a hurdle with that on its own. But I feel like if I don't want my team to play in Arizona because I need them to get better and play in Seattle, there shouldn't be any hurdles with that. I should be able to do that if I was the owner or GM. Kyle, what are your thoughts?
I think it's a great idea, and I think it. You for one, look at our pitching staff. I don't think you're going to find a better five. I mean, there might be some competition with potentially New York and others like that, but I'd love to see you take your 26-man roster, you take the pitchers, you give them your top prospects, and then you take the top prospect pitchers, give them with the hitters. So that way you're kind of looking at like a Football Reference ones versus ones. So your major league hitters are facing your major league pitchers, and what great way to ramp up the year than facing potentially the best rotation in baseball. If you want to kind of figure out where you're at, and if you're able to succeed in that ballpark, then you kind of get yourself ramped up for that season. Because again, we could say, okay, major league roster, face AAA guys. I mean, at that point, you might get some good looks, but ultimately, I'd rather see Kirby versus Julio. I think that gets not only Julio ready, it gets Kirby ready. But to me, then you spend that week, you do your 5-game series, you let your 5 pitchers go, you let your hitters roll. Everyone's getting their at-bats in. Maybe you take one of your 26-man guys, you throw them on the second team, if you may, in this regard, and you let your guys get some at-bats. To your point, in a major league ballpark in the Pacific Northwest, getting ready for the game. I think it's hard to bring like an an A's team in there because I don't want to give them more looks at our people than they already do. Also, I don't want to give them more swings in our ballpark than they already do. So to me, and then the logistics of it make it tough. So I'd rather just have, especially if you think of a FanFest thing, I want Seattle only team in that particular scenario. But I think it's great. You could have the whole day for the Mariners, sign autographs, get to know the players, and then you could kind of split. And you got to make money, right? Stanton's all about the money. Clearly, you could have from first to third, that whole half of the field, or the grandstands behind it. You could pay premium to get a seat, and then everything behind it is kind of first come first serve with the bleachers, everything up there. You put some food trucks out in the bullpen, let them get food because maybe those people aren't so interested about the game, but they're interested in the experience, right? Just to be at Safeco Field. And maybe that's somehow, there's a very cheap admission to get into that part. So you could be standing room only watching the game, but, you're not getting your own little seat down in the action. But to me, that would be great. Not only to get your 99 percenters that love the game, it might get some of your 1 percenters that realize, hey, I'm not forking over an arm and a leg just to get into the stadium, and they might find something they fall in love with. And I think that's something that I think Mariners are missing. And we've talked about it in previous things about, you look like the Arizona Cardinals, the Diamondbacks, they've figured out their tickets, that their season tickets, and where they make it cheap to get into the game. And then you spend your money when you're in there. And when you're dealing with, families of 4, those costs are pretty high. So if it's costing you only $100 to get into the game with a family of 4, and then maybe you spend an extra 100 or 150 on food or whatever trinkets, as opposed to the Mariners right now for a family of 4, it might be 200 just to get into the game. And now you're expecting me to spend more. It's just, you got to make your money. I get that. I'm not going to take that away, but you also got to get people that want to get in there and not have them go, well, I'm not going to spend $500 for an entire game and have 3/4 of that. And again, I know I'm exaggerating, but using 3/4 of that just for parking and tickets. That's ridiculous.
Yeah. To be honest, you could really take advantage of this because at that point in time, if you're taking that last week, which is late March for the most part, sometimes games aren't until April 1st. This year it ends up being later March that our first game is, but it's late March. Do you know what else is going on late March?
Well, basketball.
Yeah. Some big basketball games are happening. And what can you do in that ballpark with one of the largest TVs known to man? Play the games and have a full day of it and actually make something out of it. So I don't know. Listen, I'm making money. I'm making money ideas here for you.
And you had one, we talked about this earlier, and I think you had a really, really good point on, and I think it needs to be talked about is, we had that interview with Herman, and he didn't know where he's going to be assigned, right? Like nobody knows until that last week of spring training. And you had brought this up, and I think it's such a great point. So I'm giving you all the credit. I'm just explaining it. Is is this top 30 players shows up? Hey, you've got Cole Young signed to AAA Tacoma, or and you start labeling off all these prospects where they're going to be at. Some people might not know where these people are playing. They start, so maybe they're watching some of the Mariners spring training, and they finally get to see these guys play in real life, and they go, "Man, this guy signed my autograph. Such a cool kid. Oh shoot, he's at Everett. Oh, I can't wait. I'm gonna go watch him." You start picking up fans, realizing where these people or these kids are playing, and I think you might start being. I think that alone gets you a couple more people through the gate. And I thought that was such a great idea because it gets not only the kid exposure, but it gets the team's exposure, which eventually would lead to more fans showing up, especially if they get invested with a player because maybe they got to meet him at a personal level. I think that goes eons for some of these things that I think we're missing. And I think having no FanFest, while I never experienced one, I've had friends that have done it over the years, and when they came back and talked about it, you kind of had to go walk away because they would not stop talking about
it. Yeah. I appreciate you bringing that up because that is another big part of it is having your top 30 prospects all in one place. A couple different things, right? They get to know each other because some of them are in high A, some of them are in low A, some are in double A. They're starting to build team chemistry a bit, right? Maybe they're living together for that week while they're in Seattle, waiting to be assigned, or maybe they just found out where they're assigned. So you put it up on the big board. Little Johnny just got an autograph. He's going to be in Everett. Well, he also finds out that he's the number 3 prospect. And you have that associated with that. Oh, he's the number 3 prospect in the organization, because that also speaks volumes to the 1%ers that don't know a whole lot, and they're more glued to their phones than they are on the field, but they see that they just got an autograph from the number 3 prospect. Okay, now I'm listening. Holy smokes, that was a number 3 prospect that I just got the autograph from. Because a lot of people, that this extends beyond the 1%ers. A lot of people don't know who the top 30 prospects are. A lot of people don't know who the top 20, 15, 10. A lot of people don't know more than maybe just Cole Emerson. And some don't even know who Cole Emerson is. So that sheds light on your whole organization. And people that live in Everett, and I guess maybe didn't even know the Everett Aqua Sox existed. It's marketing to that as well. And it's marketing to your players moving forward. We wanted to wrap it up with, just a really cool idea that I had that it might, maybe there's some hurdles that I don't know about. Like I mentioned before, maybe there's some hurdles where MLB says you have to play X amount of games, which is crazy because they're not even broadcasting all the games. So what are you really winning on there? But wanted to wrap it up with a really cool idea that could enhance spring training, but especially enhance spring training for the Seattle Mariners in so many different ways. And especially to the fans. This would enhance it for you. You get to see your team maybe at a discounted rate, and you get to meet top 30 prospects, and you get to have some form of a fan fest where they're, throwing events and playing these cool games. Just an idea. For Up West Sports, I'm Gavin. Nope. That's Kyle. We'll get it. Just remember, life's too short. Gas up your boys.